All right, so while I'll talk about the experience which we've had now, we've been working with Datamatics for almost close to 2 years. Feels like we started yesterday though. But the important part of what I want to convey and express here, see, for us, when we embarked upon this journey around this procure-to-pay process, it was with an intent to solve not just the transactional aspect of our pain points, which I'll also talk about, but how do we use this new system, new design, and the new platform to strengthen and build the collaboration and also the entire partnering approach with our own internal stakeholders. So suppliers, as you'll appreciate for any organization, vendors, suppliers, service providers, they are a very critical element of fulfillment. And one approach is, of course, well, you're a supplier, we want to buy from you, so you're supposed to deliver, and we will pay you. We may delay your payments for various reasons at times, and then treat you like a typical transactional supplier, as many would imagine. So that's one approach, a very transactional and a very tactical kind of approach. The other thinking, or the other approach which probably we have thought about, is as part of our strategy, as part of our long-term strategy, these are important partners for us. So every supplier, every vendor, we will not be able to sell our product, solution, and services unless our suppliers are able to collaborate and we are able to collaborate with them. So it's a two-way process of partnering with them, helping them, and getting helped. So with that approach, or with that mindset, or with that orientation, we launched into this journey in 2018, probably end of 2017, beginning 2018. And of course, we had several pain points, as I said, which we also wanted to address, also wanted to solve in a manner that as we scale up our business, as our business grows, the entire ecosystem of these suppliers and vendors around us also grows in tandem, so that scalability of this process does not become a problem as we grow. And because you can't revisit a design of a process every 2 years, 3 years. Whatever you do, you want to do it for at least a period of 5 to 7 years. So why did we get into this process? Okay. So first and foremost, what were the imperatives? What was the need for us to get into this new P2P solution? Our legacy solution, or our legacy process, first and foremost, we had outsourced. So we were on an outsourced mode even before we got into this process. However, it was a pure vanilla outsourcing, and we had outsourced the process and the problem. So let me explain what I mean. Outsourcing is a resourcing solution. However, a lot of times clients end up making a mistake that they outsource the problem also. So they ship the baby along with the bathwater, which is a mistake, because the moment you, as a service recipient, the moment you ship out the problem, it's very difficult to then have a successful outcome. So first thing we recognize that, look, it is our problem. It is our accountability, because we are accountable to our suppliers, not the service provider. So just like we will have our own teams, we'll have our own people working at the solution, Datamatics for us will be a resource. Just like many other resources we'll put behind this solution design. And so with that mindset, with that approach, we wanted to solve this problem. So it was not yielding the results. Kind of fragmented. Blue Star is a multi-business organization. So on the surface, from the outside, it may appear that Blue Star is into air conditioning, refrigeration, purification. However, when you dive deep into the company, there are some 7 or 8 businesses, each with its own distinct operating model, and therefore a distinct, different procurement process, and therefore a P2P process. So I don't think Naveen realized this before he got into this. I'm sure they realized it afterwards. Actually, these are 7 different P2P processes all rolled up into one. Accountability was not clear earlier, and ownership therefore was not clear that who is accountable to the supplier. Is it the service provider, is it Blue Star, or jointly, or how it will work? As a consequence, delays, suppliers were not happy, visibility was poor, transparency wasn't that great, and so on. So vendor dissatisfaction and the buyer, the procurement teams internally were equally unhappy with how services were being rendered. Also all the problems that you can imagine relating to a fragmented set of process we were encountering. So this led us to the thinking of leapfrogging into a new design which has high element of digitization, number one, and where the accountability and ownership is watertight, with accountability strictly remaining within Blue Star. And how do we construct that design? So that's how we started to approach this entire problem. Now, before we got into this new design, as you can see from this particular data point, there was a long delay in even us being able to, because the suppliers used to deal with some 18 or 20 different touch points, and consequently delays in even receiving an invoice, accounting for the invoice. And as a consequence, the downstream processes were all in a state of not exactly what we wanted it to be. So when we started designing this solution, so what we did, so again, like I said, on the backdrop of a thinking process that we want to keep the accountability and ownership very strongly within Blue Star, we said we want to co-locate. So while we will have Datamatics team, Datamatics technology, and the associated solutions, an integral part of this new design, we wanted to co-locate our AP team centrally designed into the Datamatics physical infrastructure here in Mumbai. The reason behind doing that was that we didn't want a situation where, again, there is a communication breakdown between the end users and the team. So co-location was an integral element as far as we are concerned. From a decentralized architecture, we centralized. So we centralized the entire invoice, acknowledgement, receipt, and payment processing functions, and also bank reconciliations, because these three elements kind of were integrally interrelated, so it made sense to centralize and co-locate. This helped this design helped us streamline, firstly, and the end-to-end visibility of how invoices were being processed in the entire ecosystem. Where were they lying, with whom, and who also, that entire visibility suddenly became quite visible and started helping with accountability. Ownership became clearer. So we have a set of internal procurement teams who are located all over the country. So for them, it was a great change because they knew who to talk to. Earlier, they were struggling to find who should they approach should there be a problem. So we did that, and as a additional support, we also created a help desk in again Datamatics, vendor help desk, so that any internal buyer or a supplier who has any problem or has a query, is not clear, can call up that help desk and find out what to do next. That also added to transparency. This was all assisted by a great deal of digitization. So the vendor portal, which was kind of customized for us and developed to cater to these 7 or 8 underlying accounts payable processes like I talked about, had to be done because there was no one single line of solution for us. So centralization, co-location, and bringing everything under one roof was the first step that we did. This vendor portal again was a clear innovation because this it was not just about giving a digitized access to our suppliers so that they get to see where their invoices were in the pipeline of processing. It started to help the suppliers interface and interact with our buyers also, because now we have the capability of a supplier to even give an advance notice of shipment before that shipment happens, and our buyers can then interact closely. And a lot of times what happens in reality that once a purchase order is issued, there are reasons where there could be some amendments, some changes, and so unless there is this alignment between the buyer and the supplier, a lot of times there are documentation issues and therefore delays. Through the portal, a lot of that started getting nipped in the bud. So now the supplier knew, okay, now there is a change, first I need to seek a PO amendment and so on and so forth. So this started to further improve transparency, segregation of duties, because earlier we may not have had a very clear capability to identify that between buyer and then recipient, how the entire duties are getting segregated. That got improved. We used technology apart from the digitization, so use of RPAs, use of AI to do some routine, mundane validation steps and automate them. Again, started to contribute. We figured out very quickly that unless we are taking care of the workload in a replicable format, it will become difficult for us to scale up. So that's why right from the beginning, adoption of some RPA tools and AI is still early days. RPA, certainly we have made good progress. So a lot of these initiatives enhance visibility for the suppliers, and whatever feedback we have taken from the suppliers, they're very happy. Now, quite interestingly, when this transformation was going on, like I said, we started late 17, early 2018. This was the time when GST was also launched. And this architecture worked very well for us because GST by its very nature is a highly centralized regulation. And this entire thing about e-waybill and invoice matching, which were early days then, we could visualize a little early on. And now it's becoming easier for us to interface and interact digitally with the suppliers as a consequence of these changes. To enable efficient usage of the portal, we have implemented few workflows, and you can see a few of them here. For indexing invoices, minimizing data entry, there is an app called TruBot, which automates and replicates a lot of otherwise what would have been manual work. Invoices get moved through workflow right from allocation to approvals to final posting in SAP. And I talked about RPA implementation and few of our high transaction, high volume areas. And all this is packaged, it's all wrapped through an app called TruBI, which enables us to have a real-time visibility of the productivity matrix of how the process is performing, what are the bottlenecks, and where things are getting stuck, if they are getting stuck. A very recent addition to this entire package is a mobility solution. Now what we intend to do is through a mobile-based app, enable the suppliers to be able to transact on the portal so that they, on the go, while they are on the move. This helps our internal buyers also because a lot, for example, in our projects business, where at any given point in time, we may have some 200 odd active projects across the country. A lot of our project managers otherwise have to come back to an office to do approvals of, let's say, whatever material they have inspected and so on. Now, through the app, they will be able to, they are not bound by any one single place. So, broadly, this is what we have achieved. Now, what have been the outcome? So, we got 7,000 vendors onboarded over the last 18 months, you can say. The booking time has reduced by close to 30%, 33%. And this is just the beginning. We are very keen, very sure that we'll achieve further improvements. 70% of all our invoices are through the portal. And like I said, because the inherent complexity of our processes is such that it's not a single uniform business model. There are multiple business models. So it is taking us time, and we will keep evolving to a stage where probably 90% plus, 95% plus interaction with the suppliers is through the portal, and the human manual intervention starts to go away. Payments, now 98% of the payments are being made within TAT. This has helped tremendously build trust and confidence within the internal stakeholder community, our own buyers and the suppliers. So suppliers now know they don't have to run after any particular procurement person or a finance person to chase up for payments. They can just go to the portal and find out where their payments are lying. So this is all what I just wanted to share on this solution. Like I said, early days, we want to take it to the next level. This is just the beginning where we have successfully transitioned. That's how I would classify our current progress. And the idea is to now use the platform effectively for greater strategic objectives and use the data which will emerge. There's a lot of data which is getting intelligently captured, to use that data for making some productivity improvements. Of course, the idea is the ROI is always a critical objective for, certainly for me and for the shareholders as well. So I'm very confident with the collaborative approach we've had so far. We will be able to deliver and achieve a lot more. So that's all I had, Naveen. Thank you.
Thank you, Neeraj. And now we are open for any Q&A, any questions you have. You have heard me, you have heard Neeraj on the complete. The basic topic was bridging the gap between front office and back office. So any questions, whatever you have.
Thanks. I just want to understand the cycle, what you said in the last is now 30 days, which is reduced to 33%.
Yeah.
So one is that question. I want to understand clearly what start and what is the end in that, to understand.
Sorry.
What is the start of that and what is the end of it?
What is the
end-to-end booking, you said 30 days it takes.
End-to-end. So it was taking us close to 40 days before we got into this new process. It's already down by about 30%, so say around 30 days. Our own internal aspiration is to lower it down further. Reducing TAT is the starting point for us. Probably end would be somewhere less than 3 weeks or something like that, because in a manufacturing organization, there is a point in time by the time the material is received and it is physically inspected by the store's production people, only then you can go ahead and account for it. So we are giving ourselves about 3 odd weeks, or probably a little less than that, as an end point. But the critical part for us here was to bring a lot of transparency in the entire cycle, so that the supplier knows, our buyer knows, and the end user knows where their material is, and consequently where the invoice is traveling through the entire pipe.
The purchase order and the GRN particularly lies with the functions normally, right?
Yes.
So that's the major bottleneck, do you see, for
well, there were many of these issues. So clearly, one major issue we had to contend with or handle was managing change within the organization, and firstly getting the design sorted out properly, getting the technology elements sorted out, and then engaging with internal stakeholders to drive them through the entire process changes. So there were many bottlenecks. These were not the only ones. But the idea was that how do we carry everyone together? Because a process transformation usually doesn't work if you're just trying to approach it top down. And in a larger organization where you've got multiple stakeholders, everyone with different competing objectives, priorities, pain points, whatever else. So carrying everyone together and then working with them and through them to resolve each bottleneck, each constraint, each difficulty, and each challenge in a very systematic manner has been our focus. And of course, getting the GRNs sorted out is definitely one of the... So we've automated a lot of that. Getting the GRNs automated through this process has been done.
Thank you. One more question I have.
So before that, I'll just like to answer one more thing, add on one more thing to what Neeraj said. So one is the change management internally. And Neeraj would agree, there was a lot of change management which we had to cater to externally, like vendors themselves. Now, if you look at the vendor spread of 6,000, 7,000 vendor across the rural location or semi-urban location, where the connectivity or usability is also the issue, And that is where the vision, we took Neeraj's vision to the vendor, where we will go to vendor. We will train them, we will multiple times we will train them and make sure that they come online. So that was another major change management. That's where even though our onboarding of vendor today is 100%, but adoption still is 70%. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, my next question was on that only, on vendor portal. That's one biggest thing, 70% achievement. It's a good achievement actually, I believe. What were the challenges you faced? I just wanted to understand in that process completely.
Yeah. So like I said, the first challenge was getting the design sorted out. Because if the design was not properly thought through, and like in our case, as I mentioned, we have multiple business entities, and each business entity, even though it's housed within the same legal entity, has a different operating model. So the procurement cycle you will follow typically for a projects business will be very different from a manufacturing business, very different for a services business, and very different for when you are exporting. So as a consequence, we had to have a design, we had to think through a design which could cater to the requirements of multiple sectors in a manner of speaking. So that was the first big challenge which we had to work our way through. Followed by, of course, the technology aspects, because which technology will serve our purpose, how should we ensure that whatever technology we select is scalable, so that we don't get stuck and boxed in a situation where after 2 years again we are scratching our heads that, okay, now what to do. The third element was about change management, because moving an elephant in a transformation project is a big problem. So, and let me share with you, it's not just about change management involving internal stakeholders, it is change management involving suppliers, the entire vendor community, internal stakeholders, our own team, and our own teams. When I say own teams, basically it's Blue Star and Datamatics teams collectively put together. How to get, and probably Naveen and I have spent countless meetings aligning our teams to understand that, look, this is not intended to be me versus you, us versus them. It is not about, so it's a collaboration. So unless that collaboration thinking got sorted out, nothing's going to move forward. So we have overcome quite a few of those issues, and I guess now things are rolling much better.